I'm Linda Katz-Wilner, and I'm the founder of Successfully Speaking. I'm a corporate communications specialist. I help people with soft skills and communication. And we've had this series, The Hard Facts, about soft skills for, actually, this is the 6th live one that we've done this year. We do this every month. Today, we have, our guest is Bill Hueter, who is a professional ESO implementer. And we're going to be talking about reorganizing your company using reverse accountability. And we're also going to talk about some communication, because I love communication, and that's near and dear to my heart. The format of this webinar series is that we're going to have the interview for no more than 30 minutes. Bill and I will be talking for 30 minutes, and then we'll have time after that to have questions and answers. But if you have questions while Bill is speaking, please put them in the chat room and we will address them. We'll address them during the session and then afterwards. And we will be done, because I know so many people have other meetings, we'll be done at 12:45 Eastern Time, but we will stay, Bill and I will stay until 1 o'clock if anybody has any further questions. So with that, I'd like to welcome Bill Hueter. And thank you so much, Bill, for joining us today. And if you can just let us know who you are and how you got to this specialty of being an EOS implementer.
Yeah, well, Linda, thank you for the invitation, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. How did I get here? Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and on my third business now. And my previous business with a couple of partners, a business in Florida, we scaled it very successfully for about 9 years, and we got to that point in where most businesses get, where the founders can only take it so far, and you need some help from the outside to get it farther. We found EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is a methodology for entrepreneurial companies to operate on, to function, and to go farther faster. We implemented EOS, and it took us a long way in 5 years. And when we sold the business, I decided that the thing to do in life, and my last chapter, my last act, would be to become an EOS implementer. That's how I'm here.
Okay, and hopefully it's not the last act, but maybe.
Well, the last, I think it's the last professional
Yes,
act of my career, yeah.
And there'll be many more acts to come, hopefully.
Yes, yeah.
So before we start talking about this, Bill, I know we're going to talk about the IDS and the reverse accountability, but let's just do a poll first, just to get a sense as to what everybody else knows about what they're doing in their companies. So I'm going to launch a poll. Let's see here. And does everybody see that poll? Bill, do you see that poll?
I do.
Okay, so if everybody can fill in, what is your company using right now to organize, to diagram your structure? Is it the organizational chart, the accountability chart, something else? And maybe nothing formal, because we do hear that from people, Bill. So let's see, we have about 90% responding so far. Okay.
It's interesting that we have some that use the accountability chart, which means that they're companies that are running on EOS.
Okay, so let's see. I'll show you what, can you see this now? I'm going to share the results. And so we do have 56% are using the organizational chart, but like you said, Bill, not surprisingly, but a third are using the accountability. But there's 11% maybe using nothing formal. So hopefully you're going to share some really good ideas to help people understand this. So with that, Bill, how do I get from an organizational chart to a reverse accountability chart? Could you walk us through that process?
Sure. So the two tools today, as Linda said, are IDS, the issue solving track, and the reverse accountability chart. And the first tool, the reverse accountability chart, is probably best understood by starting with the thing that most people know, use, and understand, and that's an organizational chart. And an organizational, and then I'll draw the comparison or the difference with an accountability chart. An organizational chart, generally speaking, is built around titles, where an accountability chart is built around functions. Titles don't always, but can drive a sense of ego or power, and they can be ambiguous in the sense that the chart with titles doesn't really tell you what that person does. It gives you a name and a title. If it drives ego and power and ambiguity, then that's generally unhealthy in an organization. But if you have an accountability chart that which defines functions, those functions, which is the name of the box, then has 5 roles in it. I'll be showing you an example of that in just a moment. 5 roles, which is exactly what that function is accountable for. Most companies find that very empowering, and they find that it makes a much clearer understanding of who is accountable for what. That most companies find to be more healthy in an organization. There's an exception to this rule, which is we understand that in terms of external facing, when you're meeting with colleagues on the outside, you might need to have a business card that has a title on it, and certainly in that case, that would be an exception to the rule of an accountability chart, which would be labeled by function instead of by title. So now let me draw an accountability chart for you and how we do it in EOS, which is we take a structure first, people second approach. So we take the people in an organization and we put them to the side, and we put the titles aside, and we say, what is the structure? What is the best and right structure looking 6 to 12 months out for your organization? And every box has a function. Every company, to some degree or another, has a sales and marketing function. It has some kind of account management function. It has some kind of operational function, finance and IT. And you can, even if it's a solopreneurship, all of those things are in one person. But in larger organizations, there's a variation on something like this. All organizations also have what we call an integrator, which is the person to whom the folks at the leadership team level are accountable. And then of course those folks at the leadership team level have folks that are accountable to them. And in about 50% of all entrepreneurial companies, there's what we call the visionary. And the visionary and the integrator are very different people. The visionary is the person at the 30,000-foot view that has the big ideas, the big conversations, and is a real creative problem solver, where the integrator is the person that gets into the day-to-day with the leadership team to keep things moving. So once those functions are defined, then we define in each of those functions 5 roles. What are the 5 most important things that each function is accountable for? Not for a person, but for the function. And when those 5 roles are defined, then we put the right people in the right seats to make sure that we have the best and right structure going forward, and then the people match the structure. So it's a structure first, people second approach.
So I have a question about this, Bill. At a time of revenue reduction, which certainly we're dealing with COVID, and possibly in the months to come, or just in the future when a company has to deal with this, how do you decide how to reduce the workforce?
Right. So we've been through sort of the first wave of this, and companies have reduced forces to some degree. And it looks as though the virus is not letting up, and so there may be future reductions that you and your organization are going to have to consider. So how to make an accountability chart into a reverse accountability chart is a way to help you think about how to reduce the size of the organization in a way that puts people and titles aside and helps you think about what is the best and right structure looking out into the future. And to do that, we take the accountability chart, and then we'll draw 2 scenarios, and these scenarios are decided upon by our clients. And in each scenario, there is a time frame and a revenue reduction amount. So let's say that at your company, you're looking out 6 months and you're thinking that you might be losing 15% of your revenue 6 months out, maybe a little bit farther. So if you think about, if you've drawn an accountability chart, not an organizational chart, you've drawn an accountability chart to understand what the functions are and what the 5 roles and responsibilities are, then you can look at it from a structural point of view, not from a personnel point of view, but a structural point of view to say, if in 6 months out we're going to be reducing revenue by 15%, then what are the functions and the roles that would be best reduced or eliminated that would serve to the greater good of the company? And in this example, I've just eliminated 2 boxes as 2 functions as an example, and this is not saying this is how you would do it. But if you're reducing revenue by 15%, you might eliminate an account management function, you might reduce an IT function. And then you might look at a second scenario that says that 9 months out, we might be reducing we might have a 25% revenue reduction. In that case, what would we do if we've already lost 1 account management function and 1 IT function? What would be the best and right structure to accommodate the revenue reduction from an accountability and a function and role point of view? And again, just an example here might be, well, maybe we would outsource IT. So again, this gives you the view that at a time of future revenue reduction, think about the structure of the company. Think about the best and right way to reduce the structure by not looking at people first, looking at them second. So functions and roles first, people second. And the second recommendation that we have in creating a reverse accountability chart is that you have it you have it devised now so that when you get 6 to 9 months out, you have the ability to have thought about this more logically and with less emotion before you get there, and you're thinking about it from the greater good of the company point of view and less in the emotion of the moment of dealing with the people issues that inevitably come with reductions in force.
And so I guess you're not targeting people, or people aren't being defensive and saying, well, you just didn't like that person in that position and now you laid them off. So I guess it just helps you have some structure to explain where you would go with this.
Right, right.
Now, before we move into the other topic, are there any questions about it? Does anybody want to post any questions? I'm not sure, Marnie, I'm not sure if there are any questions there in the chat box. Okay, here. Well, what is the best way to introduce the reverse accountability chart to my organization?
Yeah, so the reverse accountability chart is a function of having an accountability chart. So the first step would be to create an accountability chart, which is something that you can do on your own based on the simple rules that I just explained. Or if you would like, you can understand it in the broader context of EOS as a set of tools and disciplines to run your company on. And there are 2 ways to go about doing that. You can either speak to a professional EOS implementer, of which I am one, or you can self-implement. Some companies do that by buying the book Traction, which is the book written by Gino Wickman, who's the founder and visionary, the original visionary of EOS, and sort of following the guidance and the advice and the rules of how to do it.
Okay. Any other questions? Let's see.
One additional thought, Linda. I don't want to lead the attendees astray. The accountability chart is something that is spoken to in great detail in Traction, if that's the option that you choose. The reverse accountability chart actually is not, but an understanding of the accountability chart will intuitively get you to an understanding of the reverse accountability chart.
And Vicki said that the Traction is great. I highly recommend it. And then I guess the question was, I'm not sure if you answered that, but how do we create that accountability chart? You said you can read Traction, but is there any other, and have an implementer helping you? But could you just talk a little bit about how you set up an accountability chart?
Yeah, so I'll go back and and say again, it's a structure first, people second process. So think about your company not from a title point of view, but from a set of boxes that define the functions first. Draw that then at the leadership team level first, and then putting an integrator with the leader above the leadership team, accountable to the leadership team, and then draw the boxes underneath the leadership team and the functions. This might be a sales function, this might be a marketing function, etc. Again, from a functional point of view, and with a visionary at the top, if you have one, then this is where the magic really happens. This is the harder part. When you think about in each function, what are the 5 roles and responsibilities that each function has, regardless of the person that sits in that function? What are the 5 most important things for that function to accomplish day in and every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, for that function and everyone that's accountable to that function to be successful? And then once you have that and top to bottom and side to side for the entire organization, that's when you have a really strong and accurate and usable accountability chart.
And I guess that it's going to lead us into the next area, but that also fosters a lot of communication, right? So everybody's aligned and they know what to expect from each person. So I'm sure that's very fruitful to go through the process, because you learn so much about what you expect at different parts of the organization and whose role is what. So that does lead us towards communication, which of course is, I know, Bill, I wouldn't have you here without talking about communication, because that's so important. And many of us have been inundated with meetings, especially since we're working from home. I hear stories about going from one Zoom meeting to another Zoom meeting or a team meeting or back and forth all day long, and we're exhausted by it. Sometimes we wonder, are meetings necessary, even when we were in the workplace? So I know you have a tool that helps people communicate in meetings. And before we go into that, let's do another poll to see what everybody else is doing. Let me just, I don't know if that was showing the whole time on everybody's screen, but let's go to this next poll. And the question is, what are your biggest concerns about the meetings you're having in your organization? And in this case, you can click off multiple areas. You don't have to just make one decision. So let's start taking this poll. What's your biggest concern? The most important issues don't get identified in the meeting. Oh my goodness. The most important issues don't get prioritized. They don't get solved, but some of you just love meetings. Just bring them on. I love meetings all day long. For some reason, nobody's responding to that. I don't know why. And maybe you'd love meetings if they're done the right way. Right, Bill?
Exactly.
Okay, so we have 75, okay, we have, let's see, 83% of the people responding. I'm going to end the poll, and I will share the results, and look what we have here. So 60%, both things don't get prioritized, they don't get solved. And actually, I'd love to know who loves the meetings and why they love the meetings. So even if you can post that in the chat, if you want to, why do you love meetings? And is it because they're done the right way? I'm not sure, this is anonymous, who said that, but I'd be curious to hear that. But I'm going to stop sharing the results now, and let's move into the system that you talked about, Bill, that's going to help with the communication.
Sure, and that's, I'll go back through, here we go. The second tool, and that tool that allows for better communication and in the end, better problem solving in a meeting, is called IDS. The issue solving track: identify, discuss, and solve. And it is a way of solving issues in your weekly meetings so that the issues go away forever. And I'll say right up front, I know that sounds euphoric, I know it sounds Pollyannish, but I'm here to tell you that it actually does work. So the usual form of issue solving in a meeting for most companies is first, so if you think of it in terms of identify, discuss, and solve, in many meetings in many companies, issues aren't clearly identified. So that's step one. Many times an issue is identified that is actually a symptom of a much deeper rooted issue. And so you end up discussing the symptom and not and maybe solving for that instead of the root cause of the problem. So identifying the real issue is not always done. Then what happens, when a bunch of experienced, smart people get together, they discuss the heck out of it because everybody has that need to be heard and to contribute. And discussion goes on for a good long time. That discussion doesn't always end in a solution that actually has solved the root cause problem. So that's the way many companies end up identifying, discussing, and solving problems, which doesn't always get to the root and get to the solution. In companies that run on EOS, we use a discipline called IDS, Identify, Discuss, Solve. It's the issue solving track. And here's how it works. First, what's an issue? We always think of the negative side of what's an issue. The negative side is what's bad. It's either a problem or an obstacle or a barrier, but it could be something good. It could be a new idea. It could be a new opportunity. So the first thing we do is if you're in a room with a whiteboard or electronic screen with a Word doc, whatever you can write on, put up an issues list and give everyone in the room permission to say, here's an issue, let's solve it. And then you just put up an issues list and you put up, say, let's put up issues and name them quickly and succinctly. So once the list is created, then you move to prioritizing. And we say, what are we going to solve first? What are we going to solve second? What are we going to solve third? And the best way to do this is to not overthink it. Just someone says, let's do number 4 first, number 7 second, number 2 third. And I'm just doing this randomly as an example. Then you move to the first issue and you follow the IDS principles. I is identify. The person that brought the issue up, state the issue succinctly. Then, if necessary, dig to find the real issue. That's not always necessary, but sometimes it is. Is it a symptom of a deeper issue, of a deeper root cause? If so, don't move to discuss until you've found that deeper root cause. Stop, then move to discuss. And the rules of discuss is that everyone can share thoughts and ideas and concerns and experience and solutions. Open and honest debate is really what you want, but make sure that you don't repeat, because repeating is politic, and it's amazing if you tell people don't repeat, it's amazing how much shorter discussion gets. And the other thing is make sure that you don't go off track into another issue, and stop when all is said with no repeating and no going off track. That's when that's when D has ended. Then you move to solve.
Okay, before, can I interrupt for 1 second, Bill?
Yeah.
Is there a time limit on the discussion?
There's no specific time limit. People naturally understand that if the rule is don't go off topic and don't repeat, that the time frame gets shorter. Mm-hmm. People feel themselves moving more towards a solution. And when everyone, the purpose is not to stifle conversation. The purpose is to have productive conversation. So when everybody has said what they want, and without anyone being shushed, mm-hmm. that's when you're at the end of D. So there's no specific time limit. And then move to solve, make a decision, come to an agreement. You may have to go back to discuss because you may find that you haven't truly solved the root cause issue, but most times you have. And then with the solution always comes an assignment of an action step to somebody in the room that is put on their to-do list, which is do it at next week's meeting. Then you're at the end of solve for issue number 1. Then you bring up issue number 2, and it's rinse, repeat. Identify, make sure you get to the root cause, discuss, don't repeat, don't go off topic, and then move to solve. agree on a solution, assign the to-dos, and then move on to number 3. And when you and then when you've got those first 3 done, then you prioritize the next 3 on the list. That might be number 1, that might be number 2, and might be number 3. Again, rinse, repeat, I, and then D, and then S for each of those 3. And that's the way the issue solving track of IDS works. It helps you solve your issues, those short-term things that are either in the way or ideas and opportunities that you might agree to pursue. More times than not, it's a problem to solve, so that you get it out of the way to keep your long-term progress moving quickly and in the direction that you want.
Now, Bill, you mentioned 3, that you prioritize 3. Is that usually what you do, or was that just an example? Could it be that there's 1 and we have a meeting about 1 issue? Or what would happen if we had 5 issues? Does that become too long a meeting or too much to deal with? What are best practices for you? Is it 3?
Yeah, the best practice is to, and I'll run it back here, identify the first 3, then IDS number 1. When you're finished, IDS number 2 and IDS number 3. If you've got more time left in the meeting, then choose the next 3. So you're always agreeing on what the priority of issues are that you're solving as you're going along.
So ideally you work in 3s, and then you work in 3 and then just move on.
Yeah.
We have some good comments here. I see that Vicky said we use IDS structures, so we list all of our topics to discuss and choose and solve. And Erin said that we work out of our VTO and IDS. It works. I love meetings when done correctly, because email back and forths or misinformation is extremely unproductive. Good meetings should accomplish things quickly and directly. So that speaks to what you're talking about, Bill.
Yeah, Linda, I have to tell you that this is part of a larger discipline that we call the Level 10 meeting. And the most wonderful thing I heard was from the visionary and CEO of a company that's running on EOS. And he said, Bill, he said, at the end of our weekly what we call the 90-minute meeting, of which 60 minutes is IDSing, he said, it's the best I feel all week, because I know exactly where we stand. We've solved a bunch of issues, and I know everybody's rowing in the same direction at the same speed, at the same time, for the same reason, and there's only one good reason, and that is the greater good of the company. He said, it's the best I feel all week, and I can't wait to our weekly meeting the following week.
What about the sizes of companies? If it's a small company of 2, some of us have small companies, do you recommend this process even for meetings with 2 people?
Yeah, absolutely. The tools and disciplines, and there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 of them. The tools and disciplines that are the EOS methodology work for a company of 1 or 2, all the way up to a company of thousands. Generally speaking, companies that get professionally implemented EOS are somewhere in the 10 employee range up to about 250, but there's no prohibition on smaller than 10 or larger than 250. All of these are simple tools and disciplines that are common sense, that apply regardless of size.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. And again, it's all about communication. That's such, when you told me about this initially, I said, this is exactly what we all need to do, whether it's in our business or in our personal life, right? Don't get distracted by so many issues. Don't keep repeating yourself. Just stay focused. Erin had a comment. Ours is simply kept in a protected spreadsheet with bullets that our ops team can add issues throughout the week. Then we rank and discuss. We have L10 docs for all of our meetings. I'm a big fan. And Vicky, so we have a lot of people using this, Bill, which is great that they're here today. We have level 10 meetings every week with our teams, leadership, management, their reports. We keep our level 10 meetings with teams for documentation.
And Linda, I've got it just for 10 seconds. I've got to say, I know Vicky. I went to high school with Vicky, and I haven't seen her since. And Vicky, I love that you're here, and I can't wait for us to reconnect.
So with that, Bill, because it is 12:30 now, and what I'd like to do is open it up to more questions. But why doesn't everybody open up their cameras if they choose? They can open up their cameras so we can see some of the people who are here. And then if there are any questions, feel free to either type it in or you can open your mic. I see Shabir just said something. What about as an entrepreneur who is planning to build more business? Is it possible just to have a meeting with critical mass, like few people, like 6 people? I think you answered that just now when I asked about the 2, Bill. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if the question is what's the right size for the company or what's the right size for a leadership team meeting where you start to learn the tools and disciplines of which IDS is one.
Shabir, do you want to open up your mic if you want to clarify that? There he is. Okay, if you can unmute Shabir. Do you see on the lower left, you can unmute, there you go.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
If you can make it a little bit louder, Shabir.
Yeah.
Okay. What about now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear Bill?
Yes.
Barely.
Now?
But go ahead. I'll turn my volume up.
Okay. No, many times we build a company with very big company, but you only have 6 people reporting to you.
Right.
6 or 8 people reporting to you. This works also with this system because they will become accountable for the bottom people.
Exactly. Right. So every group, just using your example, every group that has a person that has a group of people that is accountable to one person, all of those groups in an EOS running, in a company that runs an EOS, every one of those has what we call a weekly L10 meeting, a level 10 meeting, and 60 minutes of that 90-minute meeting is IDS. And so it's not just at the leadership team level. It usually starts there, but that tool, all the tools and disciplines migrate down into all of the different levels of the company so that everyone is clear, everyone is aligned, and everybody's running in the same direction.
Fine, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for your question.
That's Shabir from Canada, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions? If you want to either open up your mic or your camera or type in the chat box. I think there was another question up here. Let me just look back and see if it was answered. Is there a go-to resource to gain a copy of an IDS issues list? Or a template? Is there any type of template, Bill?
Yeah, well, it's not that I know of. It's such a simple. Well, if it's a template for doing IDS, if the question is there a template for doing the issue solving track, there probably is. Being a professional implementer, I'm not sure. I'm sure that the rules are floating around on the web somewhere. Just Google IDS or the issue solving EOS IDS, or the issue solving track, or if you're interested in knowing more detail about being professionally implemented, I'm happy to take your call.
Okay, and I guess even a template, I'm looking right at the screen of just basically it's a task list, right, of what it is, and then you just prioritize. Yeah,
I was speaking to the rules of IDS, but the template for writing things down, it's simply just a task list, as you said.
Right, and Amy said use the L10 meeting agenda. I'm not sure. You probably understand that, Bill. I'm not sure that there's a set meeting agenda.
Yeah, there's the L10 meeting agenda. Again, IDS is 60 minutes of a 90-minute meeting in which there is a tightly prescribed agenda. It starts on time, it ends on time. It has the same people in it, and the agenda has very specific parts of running your scorecard, running your rocks, all of these tools and disciplines that are part of the EOS methodology.
Mm-hmm. Right. Are there any other questions that people may have? Okay, here, Ellie, do you think there are ways to utilize time outside of the meeting or votes within the meeting before discussion? Perhaps covered eyes, show of hands, or digital to get a sense of views before opening discussion? Ellie, do you want to open your mic? Are you talking more also about reading the body language to get a sense where people are, how they feel about the issue? If you want to open up your mic, Ellie. I'm not sure if she can open her mic.
So
here we go.
Okay.
So it sounds like perhaps you are thinking you know where I'm going, Pete, or you started to say something? I heard a Okay.
No.
So what I'm talking about is, you know, it may be a situation to discuss that may be controversial, or you just have no idea out of, let's say, a meeting of 20 or 80 or 10, you know, you just to get a general sense up front, you know, as to where folks stand, just saying, you know, why don't we, you know, again, some way you may want to avoid groupthink by having it be a private vote, or, but just kind of knowing up front, you know, if you have a general consensus, I mean, where people stand, you know, because you brought up some great ideas that are invaluable to limit the conversation, but just kind of knowing, you know, the range of views before opening for discussion.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts about that, Ellie. First, the 90-minute meeting, of which IDS is a major part, is designed for small group meetings. So it could be anywhere from 2 to usually no more than 7, 8 people. So it's
Okay.
it's a department group. But
Understood.
yeah, but the other, you bring up a good point, and that is that having some understanding about people's thoughts about an issue before you pose the issue in a meeting. There's no prohibition against that in the U.S. methodology. That sometimes that makes good sense.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I guess know your audience, know your organization, know what's expected. What if people would feel they don't want to be shocked at a meeting by a new topic? Maybe you need to check it out with some people ahead of time. Ellie, is that what you're thinking as well? Just to get a sense of how people stand on an issue before you get to that meeting?
Well, exactly. And the types of things you discuss could be wide ranging. There are times I've, you know, had a meeting with my team and maybe I was pitching a new idea, and it could literally, you know, wind up being, you know, decided on within a minute or two. And so I would do something so there wasn't groupthink, where I would say, okay, everybody shut your eyes, you know, let's vote with the 6 or 8 people in the room, you know.
Oh.
And so you could find out that everyone's already in agreement on board, and then that doesn't mean you don't want to discuss that type of thing, but yeah, it just would help to know, you know, where people fell ahead of time.
If everyone's in agreement, then the discussion will usually be short. It'll be collaborative, although you want open and honest debate if debate is, and debate is always necessary to get to strong consensus. But the discussions usually are shorter if agreement going in is the right thing. Again, not going off topic and not repeating helps keep it doesn't stifle discussion. It just helps make sure that the discussion is efficient.
Understood.
Bill, I have a question. Thanks, Ellie, for your question. I have a question, Bill. I do a lot of global work. I work with people all around the world. Is EOS or the IDS system, is it used globally with other countries? Because there are so many different communication styles and meeting styles in different countries.
There are EOS as a methodology is implemented currently by about 80,000 companies all over the globe. And so, yeah, and there would be cultural differences and communication style differences in different countries.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's so critical, of course, because I hear it all the time with my clients being in meetings and having different styles, when, especially not just global, but a company that has people in different countries, then you're dealing with so many cultures in a team meeting.
Yeah.
There's another question. What other tools, because you mentioned EOS is broader than just the IDS and the reverse accountability. Could you briefly mention what other tools might be included?
Yeah, as I said, there are about 35 tools. Some of the foundational tools are what we call the Vision Traction Organizer, or the VTO for short. And the Vision Traction Organizer is a way, it's long-term planning, strategic planning that is reduced down to a 2-day exercise, of which the following 8 questions exist. What are your core values? What is your core focus? what is your 10-year target? What's your marketing strategy? What's your 3-year picture? What's your 1-year plan? What are your quarterly rocks? And what is your issues list? And when an organization at the leadership team level works through all of those questions generally in a professionally facilitated way, it helps create the vision, which is the first of the 3 major pillars of EOS. Creating one common vision that everybody sees and believes and articulates. 2 is then instilling the discipline and the accountability to take that vision and make it real, creating traction. And the 3rd is that when you've got one common vision and you're creating traction throughout the entire company, then the health of the company will rise over time. So it's vision, traction, health, and all of the 35 tools of which I've just described, the vision, traction, organizer, that just being one, fall into those 3 categories.
So it certainly sounds quite robust, that there's a lot to it.
Yeah, there is.
And we're moving to the end of the 45 minutes, not the hour, but the 45 minutes. So I do want to thank you so much, Bill, for sharing all of this information. It's very interesting for me. I'm just learning about it now, so I think this is great information, and it aligns with so much of what I do with communication and making sure people are communicating within an organization. If you could just move to the last slide, Bill. I just want to mention, again, I do have the hard facts about soft skills for HR professionals every month. We do have another one next month. I haven't yet announced the speaker. We're in the process of finalizing that. I was going to take off for the summer, but so many people are not going away for the summer and going to meetings that we will have it through the summer. Also on my website, you can see all 5 previous interviews as well as Bill's. They are all there on the Linda Katz-Wilner website, so you can watch them there. And we will be sending a follow-up email with some information and a survey. I hope you can complete the survey and any other information that we will share about upcoming events. Please feel free to reach out to me. Please feel free, I'm sure, Bill, to reach out to Bill if you have any questions. And Bill, I thank you so much for sharing your expertise today.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, and hope to see everybody again next month. And stay tuned. If you want to get on the mailing list, I can keep you abreast of what other workshops we have and what other seminars we have. So thank you, everybody. Stay safe, be healthy, and hopefully we'll see you next month.